I like salad. Do you like salad?
Hi, I'm Hostion Ho. I'm living in Vancouver, BC, Canada, unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I am an immigrant to Canada from China.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea, coming to you from Victoria, but more importantly known as unceded Akwesasne territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and I am an immigrant from the United States of America. And you're listening to
Canadian Salad.
Canadian Salad. Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and a big welcome back to Hostion.
Yay, finally!
You're back
from
in
Asia.
Canada.
I know. Oh, miss Canada. Oh,
Aw, how was China? Was it wonderful and all that
it was
could
wonderful
be?
and hot. Okay, one thing I don't
Hot?
miss Canada is the
Oh,
cold. Yeah, because it was
how
in the
hot
south.
was it?
It was like 28 degrees.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I was in
Wow.
Taiwan in a bit, so even
Oh
really
wow.
hot.
So you had to pack all of your summer clothes that you just put away
I
to
did.
go. Yeah.
Which is easy. Summer clothes are very light and small,
They're
which is
small.
great.
Yeah.
And I usually wear half a t-shirt anyway, so even better. A crop top, I mean.
Indeed. Or just the neck of a turtleneck sweater. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be so fashionista? Wow.
And then just naked, yes. Skin is my best
gosh, it
fashion
is.
accessory.
It is. It is. There's just no shame in your own skin. Not that I'm advocating for nude colonies, but I think they have a place. Anyway, do you want to give our listeners a clue to what we're going to talk about today, Hoshin?
We're gonna talk about something about me and something about you.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
So
it's one
about you, we're going to talk about
collective culture,
cultures. And for me,
the individualistic culture.
very much so, yes. It's true. There's differences. This is one of the things that always fascinates me. I've lived in some collective cultures and I have really enjoyed that experience, but also it's very foreign to me. It's very different. It's a system that I don't know. There's so many beautiful things about it, but it still is always a huge learning curve anytime I go to a collectivistic culture.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
from a collective culture and I live in Canada, which is a very individualistic culture.
Indeed,
Yeah.
it is. And lonely. I can't
know.
imagine, right?
I
So-
mean, there's pockets of collective culture. I mean, the great thing about Canada is a lot of, it's very multicultural, of course. So there's a lot
Sure.
of options. If you do
Yeah.
want to seek out community, there's always
Mhm.
ways for you to
Mhm.
find them.
It's true. I was at the bike
Yeah.
park with my son and I met this guy who was from the States and he's like, "Oh, I'm a part of a Democrats in Canada club." And I was like, "Oh, well, go you." I didn't know that existed, but yay. I'm glad you have a place you can talk about politics with
Yeah.
like-minded Americans living in Canada. So
For people who maybe don't know what collective and individualistic culture are like,
Good point.
collective culture tend to promote working from groups and promote selflessness and group harmony, and individualistic culture is more promote personal characters and desires over
Independence.
independence over group.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's generally the differences. Again, usually East Asian countries tend to, I would say Asia in general, tend to be more collective. And
Yeah.
then major Western countries are Canada, United States, most European,
Mhm.
Western European countries, maybe even South Africa, are in general more individualistic.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just, for people to know.
That is good. No, we have to assume that maybe not everyone knows.
Andrea, what is your
Yeah.
individual experience with collective cultures?
Oh gosh. I mean, it really didn't start until I started traveling overseas.
Okay.
So in
I would assume
particular,
so.
yes, indeed. When I went to overseas to Nepal, I lived there for a couple months just volunteering with a nonprofit. That was a huge eye opener because the Nepalese people, you come over to their house and grandma lives upstairs, cousins live next door. You're always going to have a meal. You can't leave until after like 5 or 6 hours of spending time there. There was just this collective nature of we are all hosting this guest. It's not
Mhm,
just,
mhm, mhm.
one person. It is here comes grandma down the stairs. Weddings, the whole process of weddings. There was a lot of these different pockets of collective experiences, particularly within East Asian cultures, India, Nepal, and even with refugees from Iraq. I remember I was in the States and I was tutoring this one woman English in her
Oh,
home,
okay.
and they wanted to go pick out tires from the tire store, and I was just thinking I was gonna help interpretation with the father while the whole family gets in the vehicle. And so everyone's gonna go to the tire store to talk about tires, even though only the father was gonna make the decision. So it was one of those things where, again, it was the whole family's involved, the family unit's going together to do this one thing, even though it maybe relies on just one particular family member. So my experiences have only been in overseas, but also just a few glimpses here on Turtle Island and in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, very, very
Yeah,
different from mine, I would
very.
say.
Hoshin, what about your experiences with an individualistic culture?
I think I moved out when I was quite young. I was like in my early 20s. So I already have like a very, collectivism already in my bones, because I've been living
Sure.
for so long already. But then, so when I actually immerse myself in a very individualistic culture, I realized the
Mhm.
first thing that gives me a lot of anxiety is how friendship works is very different. I remember it's very common that the friends I made were very just themselves. They don't necessarily
Yeah.
mingle with you. They don't always hang out with you after class. They had their own life, and it's just
Yeah.
occasionally you meet up for a little bit and they never really ask you for help if they needed. Sometimes when you hang out as a group of friends hanging out, and then some people will ask, "Oh, who's gonna be there? What are we gonna do?" Other than like just hang out, which
Right.
is very different than my
Yeah.
experience because at least in China, when you hang out, you hang out. Where
Yeah.
and what we do doesn't necessarily matter because as long
You're
as,
existing in some ways together and just enjoying
yeah,
each other's company and
yeah,
presence.
what you want, where you want to go,
Yeah.
what you want to eat, not
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily,
Have to have a plan or an
yeah,
objective, an agenda.
it doesn't have to be specific and it have to be like
Yes.
satisfy everyone's needs,
Right.
so that is very different.
Yes.
um it just way for me, I sometimes is less work to maintain friendship because it doesn't need much to maintain friendship because you just kind
Yeah.
of loosey goosey relationship anyway.
Yes.
But then it also takes a lot to maintain a friendship in the sense because somehow you have to care for everyone's needs when you get
I
together.
see.
So
Sure.
it's very
Sure.
different. And
Yeah.
where I grew up, friends we hang out all the time.
Yeah.
Usually just like one message, you want to hang out, if you feel, let's go. And usually
Mhm.
most of the time just last minute. Other than you have to like, oh, should we hang out like next week, this time, this date on in this location? Like you
Yeah.
don't.
Let me ask my
Yeah.
mom, my dad. Let me just make sure that I have no plans. Yes. It does. And I mean, there is diversity in cultures. There might be families that are much more collective just because that's the way they are. Maybe grandma does live under the same roof. Maybe they do just drop over at their friend's house, whenever they
Mhm,
want
mhm,
to.
mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
not to basically say like everyone's the same, but majority of experiences and majority culture here in Canada, it is very individualistic. It
It
is
really
not.
is. Yeah. I remember it also brought a lot of challenges for me, especially when I first entered in like an interracial relationship with like someone who from a very individualistic culture. The way how collective work is, I will think about their needs if we're together. Or what does he want?
Right.
What does he like? When I was in a
Right.
relationship with him, but then he also think about him.
Right.
He-
He's getting the
I
best deal. He's
Yeah,
getting
he's getting
two
the best
people
deal.
thinking about him.
Exactly. He got the best deal. He
Yeah.
also, only was, thinking of him. I was thinking of him, so he got the
Yeah.
best deal. His needs really, tended. Mine
Lucky
was not.
guy, man. Yeah,
So I
exactly.
it took me a long while to realize I had to be very verbally and direct and straight to
Mm,
talk about what I need and what I want.
mhm.
Because again, that is not a trait in a collective culture. It's very prominent. Like just like bluntly tell people what you want.
Right.
Because again, we prefer like group harmony rather than
Right.
what you individually want,
Exactly.
right? So it took me a while to get to that. So like this kind of,
Gosh.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is, yeah. And compromises are so much more kind of
Yes.
common, I would say, in the individualistic culture, especially my personal experience in, in a romantic relationship, it definitely needs a lot of discussion to, is it okay how much you want to compromise? And is this okay you compromise this way? And, it just,
Right. Yeah.
it's not given, you have to
Yeah.
like so much discuss the communication to get to that point.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I do remember when I lived in India for 4 months, I remember at times being so overwhelmed with seeing people and talking with people like all day long. I remember I think I told my host family, I said, I need a day off. I need a day to myself. And they really didn't understand that. And it was trying to describe it and describe that need. It just, yeah, it wasn't necessarily a understood on the other end. They just thought, oh, maybe she's sick, maybe she's not feeling well. And so it's in some ways I feel terrible, but I would tell a little lie and be like, yeah, I'm just not feeling very good. I just need to go lay down. And I would just stay in my room because I didn't have internet, cell phones when I was over there. So I would just stay in my room and read a book or close my eyes
Oh,
and
that's
just listen to the
good.
fan whir above me. But you're right, there is a lot of compromise when you are living in the exact opposite type of culture that you grew up in. When I moved to
Yes,
Canada, there wasn't a lot of compromise.
which is great for you.
It is, but also we'll get into why I really adore collective cultures and why I wish we had more collective aspects of collective culture in Canada. Hoshin, we've kind of touched on some of the differences between collective and individual culture. What would you say are some bigger dynamics of these two frames, individualism and collectivism?
We just mentioned that in general, the individual versus group dynamics differences in terms of making a decision in collective culture. Of course, you
Mhm.
make the decision which is best for the group, not best for you. It
Right,
might be a decision that you don't like at all. You still have to
right,
make it because it's
right.
for the group benefit, and which is opposite of individual culture. Um, and I also see that very different in family dynamics, because I would say in individual culture, of course, yourself,
Mhm,
one person is a unit
mhm,
in
mhm.
society, and in collective culture, a family, I would say, is more of a unit, because everything you
Yeah,
do is mostly on behalf of your family or some other type of group that you feel, feel very personally strongly related to.
yeah,
Which again, in many ways, in collective culture, usually is family.
right.
Which is also why sometimes, oh, you have to make your family proud, all this kind of idea,
Sure.
kind of
Mhm.
stereotype
Bring the
ideas.
family name honor and
Yeah, like,
yeah,
which if you see
mhm.
Mulan, you will understand.
Love Mulan.
I
Such a
know,
great
love that
movie.
movie.
Yes. Great songs.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is definitely the major differences. What about individual culture? Do you think there's
Yeah.
any differences in terms of family dynamics, you
For
think?
sure. I remember having my son and my mother-in-law, bless her, she came and visited for 2 weeks to be with me. And of course, he was late, so he didn't even arrive on the due date. So she hung out for a week and a half, just kind of waiting for him to come out. And then finally I had him, and then she had to leave. And
Uh-huh.
so that was lovely. And yet then that was kind of it. So then it was me and Mark for the rest of our days raising this baby that they just let us walk out of the hospital with because they just do that. You have a baby and they just assume, "Oh, yeah, you're fine. You're going to be a great parent." I'm like, "No, I have no idea what I'm doing." But when I heard, I think it was our mutual friend Alice was talking about having a baby in Vietnam and
Mm-hmm,
how she
mm-hmm.
said typically for the first month, mom would be up there in the room with baby. And
Yeah.
cooking, cleaning would be done by aunties, grandma, anyone who was available and, would just do that for as long as they could.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that and thinking, "S- that, you hear this saying like, oh, it takes a village to raise a child. I ain't got no village. Where's
But
my village?"
in China, Eastern, I would say East, Asia, Southeast Asia, that is
Yeah.
common. It really takes a village. It
Yeah.
just literally, not
Yeah.
metaphorically, like
I
literally.
I believe that. And so I feel like, I mean, there's been lots of research and studies done on like child upbringing and rearing and like actually the mental health of women in Western countries being really, really poor because they are doing it solo. They are not
Mhm.
doing it with people in a group, in a village, in a community setting. And so there's that piece, but I would also say grief. I think when I miscarried, I kind of grieved alone and I went right back
Mhm.
to work the next day, right? And in some
Alright,
ways,
yeah.
grief is something that at least in an individual culture, it's like you deal with on your own and you plow through whatever you need to do. And so when I learned that other cultures, I mean, I think it's 70% of the world's countries are collective cultures.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
When I learned that there are other countries and other people groups, even indigenous people groups,
Mhm.
who actually wail and mourn and grieve together.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Like, your grief is our grief. We are going to weep with you. We are going to share this burden with you. And in an individualistic culture, you might have one or two people say, I'm thinking of you or checking in on you every now and then. How you doing? Which means a lot.
Mhm,
At the
mhm,
same
mhm.
time, though, you're on your own and you can't have that space to process with anyone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and that's why I think collective cultures are really, really enticing to me and really attractive to me because in many ways there's been so many big monumental things in my life and even the family structure. It might be even child rearing. It might be the ways in which in Western culture, we send children to their rooms to think about what they've done and to cry and process alone. And that's completely an individualistic culture thing. That's not at least I think it is, and that's something that I don't do with my son. I'm much more
Yeah.
collective when it's like, I'm gonna sit with you in these tears, and yeah, you're having a tantrum, yeah, you're mad at me, but your emotions aren't too big for me,
Yeah,
and
that's so
they matter,
nice.
right? And so in
Yeah.
some ways it is, I find these collective pieces in my life wanting to be shared with an individualistic society, and I'm not sure how to do that sometimes.
I think that is a very I mean, I get that maybe you come from a very individualistic point of view when he's
Yeah.
processing negative emotions, maybe like crying, maybe like a miscarriage, kind of. But I think that in collective culture is also seen differently. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think they also collect people usually collectively also deal with those negative emotions because negative emotions or events even
Mm.
in at least in China, I would say is something that you also try not to deal with collectively. Not because we are individualistic or we don't want to do it as a collective, but more for the perspective that it is negative. Hence, if you
I
share
see.
it publicly, you will affect the group. Let's say you're
Mm.
crying, you're gonna bring down everyone's mood. So you should not do that
Oh,
in
I
public,
see. I
for
see.
example. So you should
Yeah.
only do with very in close
Okay.
quarters and with people that you trust, maybe one or two or families, close families. You don't do it in a big group.
Yeah.
Because again, the whole idea of collective culture is you want to preserve this group harmony.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's where the diversity of collectivism can differentiate depending on the culture and depending on the country, right? Because maybe in some countries, negative feelings aren't not considered negative, right? Like weeping
Yeah.
or sadness. And so there is maybe a different approach, but you're right. I would love to see collectivism thrive or at least have space in an individualistic society. I don't know what you think, Hoshin, but how do you think collectivism in a positive way can complement an individualized society such as what Canada has?
I think we have to agree both individualism and collectivism has its benefits
Yes.
and also had its negative kind of
Yes.
connotations.
For sure.
For example, individualistic definitely encourages people for like self improvement, for their individual character to develop individualistic, um, you know,
Identities and
identities
yeah.
and to be independent, which is all good qualities to have. And collective culture definitely teaches you to be more empathetic, um, and definitely be more caring and be less selfish. So I
Mhm.
think that both of them are great. I think, of course, in an ideal world, I think if we can just pick all the good traits and combine into
Yes.
one, that would
Yeah,
be best.
exactly. That would be amazing. Yeah, we
Yeah,
could call it collective individualism.
yeah, combine them work together. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
and to your question, how collectivism can thrive in individualistic culture, I think we can use Canada as an example. Canada definitely is a very individualistic country,
Mhm.
and I also want to introduce a tool to everyone, which is called Hosted Insights, which
Oh,
everyone can go
yes.
to that website. Just Google
We'll link it
Hof.
in our resources. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you
It's a
can
great
compare.
tool.
Yeah, you can compare
Mhm.
countries of individualistic score and collectivistic score, so you can see
Mhm.
which country is what. But
Yeah.
Canada is like very high, and versus China is really low in the
Right.
individualistic score.
Right.
And so for me personally, how do I can my collectivism thrive individualistic country is to find those pockets of collective culture.
Yeah.
And sometimes find your community. Because I think
Mhm.
one thing that individual culture like allows you to do is that freedom, that kind of you can be whoever you want, do whatever you
Yeah.
want. And then
Yeah.
maybe then you can, go find that.
Yeah.
And then um I think you also have to aware that you are capable of having both individualistic
Yeah.
culture in you and collective culture in you, right? That's the second point I want to mention, that you are capable of having both in you. And then realizing that, then you can also be selective of what part of you want to maintain, what part
True.
of you want to pursue.
Mm.
Dr. Barry has this culturation model, which is one of my favorite culture theory that when I was
Yes.
studying my master's,
Yeah,
it
we'll
talks
also link
about,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it literally talks about this called dimensional model of acculturation, which is how individuals
Mhm.
adopts culture when they are thrown into like a dominant culture or host culture.
Mhm.
Like for example,
Mhm.
a Chinese culture come to Canada, Canada becomes my host culture, and the
Yeah.
Chinese culture becomes my culture of origin. Um, and then the dimensional model suggests or just says that for me to be in a host culture, I have to adopt a new culture, obviously, if I want to thrive
Mhm.
in there. And then at the same time, to maintain part of my origin if I want to, keep it. Not everyone does.
Right.
Not everyone does.
Right.
Just saying,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I prefer both. And
Right.
so for that collective to thrive, you have to try to keep it actively. So you have to find a group. And then at the same time, finding the individualism in you, or pursue that individualism benefits, then you have to kind of actively put yourself,
Mhm.
immerse yourself in the
Mhm.
host culture, which is in this
Mhm.
sense the Canadian culture, and
Yeah.
then learn by mistake, learn by confusion,
Yeah.
learn by
The best teacher.
yeah, communication.
Yeah.
I
Practice makes
all
permanent.
extend
Yeah.
all my exes, all my friends who taught me
Yeah.
all these things, and
Mhm.
just be aware of both of them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think in that vein too, I think it's easy for us in individualistic societies to really misunderstand collective cultures or collective ways of handling situations.
Mhm.
I know that I have had friends who are from more collective cultures here in Canada, and they will just stop by the house because they want to chat with me about something or they have
Oh,
something to drop off.
that
And
is
I love
how
that.
yeah, that's
I
how we
do.
do.
It also throws me off guard because I because I'm in a certain headspace. I might be making dinner or I've got to take my son to
Mhm.
scouts or whatever it is. And yet it's no, this person took time to think of me, to come to me. I need to just compromise and allow that space. And when they're ready to leave, they're ready to leave. Like
Yeah.
so I think in Canada, we can do a better job of creating that collective space for people
Mhm,
when they
mhm.
want it and when they are expressing it.
Yeah.
It might be something you don't understand, but then
Mhm.
be curious and just being able to ask those questions, and see what the person needs and what they want. And don't
Yeah.
just assume they're being intrusive or they are not being mindful of your schedule because no one knows your stinking schedule, okay? They're just being
Ye
a friend and they're just stopping by. All right.
Yeah. I
And
mean
so yeah.
in that sense, like, you and me are a great example. You're obviously from the States, which is also one of had the
Yes.
highest scores,
We're number 1, baby.
yeah, in the individualistic scale.
Yes.
And I'm from China, who have the one of the lowest
Yeah.
individualistic scale. So like we
Yeah.
are, I mean, sometimes like it's amazing that we are close friends because
I
we are
know. It
very different on
is.
paper.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
are in so
And
many
we,
things. But
yeah,
I
and we
love
learn
but
from each other. Yeah.
we are. We're like the example for Canada. Like we are
Wow.
the pea and the tomato of what a Canadian salad
So
really looks like.
we need many
So
other more.
take notes, Canada. All right? Take notes. Hoshin, last question. How have you, kind of in that vein of like, even though we're really opposite, how would you say that we've learned from each other?
I definitely think like what we just talked about the kind of open communication, that curiosity, which actually is like the thread of everything we talked about.
Yeah.
I think to learn, you have to be curious. It's
Yeah.
always the first thing if you want
Yeah.
to learn.
Mhm.
And to also understand there's a lot of benefit of learning from each other.
Yes,
Yes, there is great benefit. So
There
learn,
is.
honey. Oh my God.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Don't wear
Pick
the
up
same
that.
dress every day. Put on some color. You just make yourself a statement every day with everything.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
salad.
that's right.
Put
No one
different
just
vegetable in
wants
it.
Can you imagine a salad just all tomatoes
Or
or all
peas.
peas? Gross. Okay, guys,
Put some
that's
things,
just
different things in
you.
it.
Yeah, put different
Yeah,
things in. Flavor.
exactly.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a lot of like. Remember when I just said before that how friendship threw me off, how it operates
Yeah.
here. You, of course, you are one of the first friends I made. So yes, hanging out with you sometimes. Oh, I guess that's how it works. Okay, I have to adapt that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not apology. You don't have to apologize, but this is how it works. So I had to kind of learn the new
Yeah.
way how people operate, how
Mhm.
they and because I know your friend, so of course I know none of the things you did were like with bad intent, obviously. So I
Sure.
know everything you did with a great heart and with love, and so I just know, oh, that's just
Yeah.
how things are here,
Yeah.
especially now that we live here, and that's just the host culture I have to adapt to.
And
Um,
that's a very generous posture to have when you are in a country that is completely opposite in many ways. That's a very generous space to be. And that's something that I think with our curiosity, we really need that generosity and lack of assumption,
yeah.
right? Don't assume that someone's being a certain way, right?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, this is no bias. Like, never bring agenda up
Mhm.
when you are with a person because everyone
Right.
is different. Even, yes, like maybe you're individualistic, another white person might be individualistic, but maybe different scales of it. You
Yeah,
might be different spectrum, different ends of the
that's true.
spectrum of how
That's true.
individualistic you both, are. So I think you
Mhm.
should never assume. And I think this one thing like really help kind of prepped me to be in an individualistic culture is like I remember doing my bachelor, I wrote this thesis on how kind of Western culture in general affects or impacted the kind of traditional family values in China,
Yeah.
and then I kind of did a little bit research on that and realized that our societies are getting more individualistic just in
Yeah.
general. First is due to economic growth, when you have money, when you
Sure.
have time, when you have all the resources, when you don't need like a community effort to survive, to entertain, then of
Mhm.
course you just in general we prefer to like do things your own. Because not
Mhm.
everyone necessarily have those resources, those money, those time. So it's okay,
Mhm.
then I'm going to do it because I now have the freedom to do it. Then
Right.
I would do it. And
Right.
then second is of course with most of the dominant culture in this world are, Western culture. And
Yeah.
so, and with Hollywood movies and magazines, all this soft, colonialism coming in.
Yes, soft
Um,
colonialism, people.
yeah,
It's a
Google
thing.
that
Yeah.
term is a thing. Yeah,
Yes, it
it is a
is.
thing. It mostly represents in all type of entertainment and cultural ways, no matter how overt or covert, even.
Right. Yeah.
Um, they are representing in those soft colonialism methods. They
Yeah.
are inserting these
Mhm.
individualistic
Yeah.
ideas. to
Yeah.
different cultures, right?
And making it
So
looking real attractive too, like, "Oh,
yeah.
look how
Oh, just the
nice this
freedom. Yeah,
is."
free will.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what you need, what you want is always the most important thing. Put yourself first.
Yeah,
Not always
yeah.
right. Not always right.
No, no,
It
no, it
really is
isn't.
not. It really
No,
depends on the
it's true.
context.
It's
Yeah.
true.
We
Yeah.
love self-love, but
We
sometimes
do.
too
There's a
much
line.
self-love. Yeah. Too
Yeah.
much self-love is a problem. Yes.
Yes.
You can love
Yes.
yourself in the mirror every morning.
Yes, yeah, and let it end there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but so that's
Yeah.
kind of this
Mhm.
trend of individualistic, of course, also maybe realize that yes, I need to in general just gives me more context to learn about that as well. Why do you want to learn about collective culture, and how do you think you get to do that?
It's a very good question. I think to allude to what you said, it's up to us as individuals to pursue the kinds of communities that we want or the types of collective groups that we want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is because I have lived in other places that were more collective. I think sometimes that amplifies the loneliness when you come back to your home country. You're just, well, it's just me. What am I gonna do today? Oh, I got a text from someone. Oh, but they're working. They can't hang out. And I think that is just the nature of living here. But I think in many ways, I do try to find ways to pursue that. I mean, I felt like our master's program was this collective place. And I remember it's flipped because I think when you want and you experience a collective culture, you feel included, you feel
Yeah.
thought of, you feel
Yes.
accepted, you feel all of these human desired traits that you've always wanted to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in individualized cultures and societies, it's much more how do I prove myself to get that person's approval? How do I measure up to a certain standard so that I'm a part of this group? Whereas collective cultures are like, well, you're here, you're a part of the group. So for myself, I want to take the really beautiful and good things about a collective culture and a collective society.
Yeah.
And I do integrate those into my own family, just from whether it might be collective grief or collective joy, it might be collective volunteering. Our family is starting to volunteer and do, more be proactive and mindful of our community around us and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that they can thrive. I think they can come together. I think collective and individual cultures can find a space where you can incorporate the best of the two and allow for someone to be who they are and accept it into a community. And so, um, yeah, I learn a lot from collective cultures. I remember even at Royal Roads, I remember we would all get ready to go to lunch and I'm gathering all my books and everything like that. And I'm thinking, well, everyone's on their way down to the lunchroom. Well, no, not everyone. Not Hoshin, not Alice, not most of the students who were from China or from other parts of Asia. They were all waiting. That actually has impacted me so that now when I'm with someone or with a group of people, I don't
Mm-hmm.
leave anyone behind. And no one really may notice, but that's something that always just made me feel so appreciated and welcomed and cared
Oh.
for. It was so small, but it went a long way. So,
I mean, also that. I mean, thank you for that. But that's also something we don't really realize. It's such a
yeah,
behavioral thing that is
yeah,
so inherent to us.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah,
we act as a group. So the group go or no one goes.
right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's
yeah,
also that's a great example of collective culture. Yeah,
no one's
yeah,
left behind. So,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, that's a very fun conversation. I love this.
I know it is good. It is good. And I hope, yeah, that I think just to summarize your points, Hoshin, that we have a posture of generosity with other cultures who are different than ours, that we give
Hmm.
space for a person who is trying to navigate, their collective space in an individualized culture. And two,
Hmm.
that we're curious, that we just remain curious as to, well, they're doing things differently. I'm not going to assume that they're being intrusive, but what are they doing? And how do I have a curious mind and a curious heart with this person and with this interaction?
I know. I
Yeah.
think it's one thing. This conversation also made me see we can talk about differences this way.
Yeah.
this is how differences can be discussed. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be always be like this intense debate.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. There's no competition. This is
Yeah.
just who we are. This
Yeah.
is just what makes us. And you've experienced negative things about individualistic cultures. And I've experienced negative things from collective cultures.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that it's not something that you can't have a conversation about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it is Canadian Salad Pop Quiz, where
Yay.
we do quiz each other on a factoid related to our topic and related to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, neither of us have been prepped on what the question is or the answer. This is a hard one because we are both pretty well versed in the study and nature and research of collectivism.
Individualism.
Royal Roads University. Yes. So, would you like me to go first, Hoshin?
Okay, you go first. You should
Okay.
go first. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's okay. What are the top 3 countries who have the highest individualism?
Oh, United
Top 3.
States, Australia, United Kingdom.
See, you knew this. You knew this.
I knew.
Ding, ding, ding,
yes.
ding, 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 ding. You got it. Do you know the bottom 3 that score the lowest?
The bottom 3.
Yeah.
I do not know the bottom 3. Oh wow.
Yeah. One begins with P. No, we don't have to guess. Peru. No. No. So Pakistan,
Pakistan. Oh,
Colombia,
Colombia. Okay.
and Venezuela.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So we'll link this, but those are the 3 countries that are the lowest on the individualism score. But you are
Okay.
right. United States is number 1, tied with United Kingdom. Go figure.
Okay.
They all
Okay.
came from the same thing. Anyway, your turn.
Okay. In that case, my question to you very similar to that is
Okay.
also about individualism score,
Okay.
but it's I'm asking you about ranking about Canada. So I'm asking you about the Commonwealth country, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom. 3 of them are Commonwealth countries.
Yes.
What do you think? How they rank from top, the first, second, and third, in terms of their individualism score?
Canada is the bottom of
Yes,
these 3.
right.
Yes,
Well,
it
really,
is
there
the
you-
bottom. So the UK is definitely the higher of the Commonwealth countries on its individualism score.
So Australia is second.
Yes.
Final.
Yes.
Wrong.
Canada. No?
No, Canada is the bottom. That's right. But the other 2 is switched.
Really?
Australia had a higher score than United Kingdom.
I have old data. I was wrong.
You have old. I am looking at the Hofstad Insights.
Oh, well, I'm looking at an actual scholastic paper that was written in 2019. So I am probably looking at older data than you.
Well, my data is 2023.
Well, aren't you current? Anyway.
That's all fun anyway.
It is. It is. Well, please stay tuned. So we are coming up to another holiday, Remembrance Day. And so our next episode is going to be the unsung Canadian heroes. And we're going to specifically talk about immigrants to Canada who joined the collective forces of the First World War and helped Canada in their efforts in the war. But these are unsung Canadian heroes. So these are people who don't get the recognition and sometimes the history told about who they are. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, and implications too. These wars maybe is more than just fighting for sovereignty. Also, for many of them, immigrants are fighting for their existence in a new country or their legal status too.
Yeah.
So yeah, all these unsung heroes, they are fighting for more than just some national pride.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to go deeper into that. Stay tuned. It's going to be really, really good. Hoshin, I hope you survive the jet lag and just getting back into the time difference from China. But I am glad you're back. Canada's so much better with their giant tomato here. So,
and I'm wearing red today, so it's perfect. Don't play a tomato.
Ding ding.
We will see you next episode.
That's right. All right. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Canadian Salad is written and produced in British Columbia, Canada by Hostion and Andrea McCoy. Theme music is by Naver Avetyan from Pixabay.
This has been a Good Drinklin production.